for this week's Parsha, Parshat Va'era, second Torah portion in the book of Exodus. And the first Torah portion, similarly to the first portion in the book of Genesis, ends on a real downer. You might remember that the Parshat Bereshit, the first Torah portion in Genesis, ends with God having regretted creating the world, and it's kind of a portents for the coming flood in the next Torah portion, Noah. Similarly, in Exodus, the first Torah portion, Shemot, ends on a downer. Of course, Moses has gotten his charge at the burning bush to go back, to speak to Pharaoh, to free the Israelites, to bring them to the mountain where Moses has this encounter with God at the burning bush. And things do not go well for Moses. He's rejected by Pharaoh. He's rejected by the people who say, who sent you? Who appointed you to be our leader? Thanks a lot, basically, Moshe. You've just made matters worse for us, because Pharaoh doubles down and takes away the straw for making bricks for the Israelites. And Moses is downcast and throws up his hands and says, why did you send me for this? And things are not looking good at the end of Parshat Shemot. And the section that I want to look at and use as the basis for our practice today, which is this a passage that introduces the sacred quality of trustworthiness, of faithfulness, in Hebrew, emunah, which is sometimes translated as faith. It's simply as faith, but can also have this connotation of being faithful. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll take a quick look at, actually, you know what? Jet, if you don't mind sharing your screen, that would be great. If you have it, I apologize for that. And if not, I can pull it up in a sec. All right, here we go. Okay. Oh, we got it. All right, Jed, if you can just make it a little larger, thank you so much. All right, so we're just perfect, slightly larger. There we go. Thank you. Perfect. All right, so what we're looking at and is a passage from Exodus chapter 6, verses 1 through 5. The first verse, verse 1, is the last verse of last week's Torah portion, Shemot, this past Shabbat. This week's Torah portion begins with verse 2. So this is the very beginning of the Torah portion. At the last line of last week's Torah portion, Parshat Shemot, God says to Moses, in response to his despondency, now you'll see what I'll do to Pharaoh, for by a strong hand shall he let them go, and by a strong hand shall he drive them from his land. So there is what we call a nechemta, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of encouragement from God at the very end. But the way the Torah portions are broken up, there is a space, of course, a week-long space. And in this week's Torah portion, this is how it begins. God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am Yud-He Vav-He, the four-letter name of God, the tetragrammaton. I appeared to Abraham, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov as El Shaddai, translated here as God Almighty. But by my name, Yud-He Vav-He, I did not make myself known to them. Just looking if you can be able to follow a little bit in the Hebrew. It's in bold. It's in bold there. Ushmi Hashem, Yud-He Vav-He, Lo Nodati Lahem. I was not known to them by this name. And then God continues, also I've established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their sojourning in which they sojourned. And I've heard the groaning of the children of Israel, whom the Egyptians have enslaved, and I've remembered my covenant. So there's this whole question about what is this name of God, Yud-He Vav-He here, and in what way did the did the that our ancestors not know this name? Because in fact, that four-letter name of God is used in the book of Genesis. So Rashi comments here that he notes that it isn't written lo hodati, my name Yotei Vav. It's not written, I didn't make known to them this name, but it's actually written lo nodati. I was not known to them. That is, I had this name, but they didn't know it. They didn't recognize it. There's something about this name that is new for Moses that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob did not know. And so what is that? Rashi says, I was not recognized by them in my attribute, my midah, my quality of keeping faith. And that's why my name is called Yud-He Vav-He, which denotes that I am ne'eman la'amit devarai. I am faithful to make true my word. I keep my word, and I promise them. But of course, in their lifetime, I didn't fulfill their promises. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob all were promised, they were promised that the land and the progeny, but they was also promised that their descendants would be strangers in a strange land for a period of time. They did not have the experience of this collective exile and enslavement in Egypt and the fulfillment of the promise to bring them back from enslavement, to be freed from and returned home from their enslavement in Egypt. So what is new here for Moses is this quality of God being ne'eman, God being dependable, being reliable, being a promise keeper, saying, I will come through. And we can understand that as perceiving, especially in moments of despondency and frustration and pessimism and cynicism, having a sense of something that restores our sense of trust in the process of life as it unfolds. Okay, thanks so much, Jet. We can take the screen share down now. Appreciate it. So just to share quickly a little bit about that phrase, what that means. That Hebrew word emunah, which is often, as I mentioned, translated as faith, can be understood as faithfulness or reliability. And in the end of the book of Genesis, we've seen the character of Joseph modeling a different quality, a quality of bitachon or trust. That is, that he's someone who's able to rely on the process of life so much so that he's not shaken when things don't go his way, and things often do not go his way. But in contrast to Joseph, Moses actually seems really shaken and kind of ready to throw in the towel after he has this first round with Pharaoh that doesn't go well. He sort of has a sense of hopelessness and futility, and I think many of us can probably relate to that. Maybe some might even say despair. He's despairing about what's going to happen. So this quality of emunah, trustworthiness or faithfulness, is it goes along with bitachon or trust. It represents everything that instills in us our own capacity for reliance and being able to trust. God's response meets that despair with a necessary counter message that says, you can count on me. Don't give up. Trust the unfolding of the process. More will be revealed than what you're seeing right now. Moses perceives that God has heard the groaning of the Israelites and remembered the covenant, this unshakable covenant that represents a fragile but unbreakable thread by which the people will survive even this apparent disaster when things are not going so well. He has a sense that he and the people have something on which they can depend, ongoing presence and support of the divine, and that they're not powerless in their predicament. There is a power available to them on which they can rely. They can perceive something or someone holding them, even as they may feel themselves to be falling in the midst of a fall. And that's really our theme for our sit today. So I want to invite us to move into practice by finding a position that's comfortable for you in your seat, or as I mentioned earlier, you can practice standing, really can practice in any position that's comfortable for you or that your body needs. But if you're sitting, I want to invite you to, sometimes it's helpful for people to move to the front of the seat, not use the back support. But in this case, I want to encourage you, if you have a back support behind you, to make use of that, because we're focusing today on this quality of emunah, that which instills and restores a sense of trust in us, that meets our anxieties and fears, and helps us build the resilience uh, that enables us to meet those challenges and move through them, whether they're personal, collective, whether they're national, whether they relate to us as a people or as human beings, whatever the challenges are that shake us, that cause us to fear or to despair. We can meet that by recalling the quality of emunah, of trustworthiness, faithfulness. We can remember that there is something that we can describe in this world as ne'eman, as dependable, as reliable, as faithful. So as you take your position, feel the support of the back of the chair or the seat. Feel the support underneath you, holding you. And if it's available to you to put the soles of your feet on the floor, feel the support of your floor. Feel the support of whatever it is that is supporting your floor, whether it's the timbers, the 2x4s of your building, your house, your apartment. And you can even become aware of the foundation of your building, something that was poured or built to provide support, a foundation that is rooted in another foundation in the ground, some bedrock, some unmovable, supportive aspect of the earth that can hold and support your dwelling. Let me take a moment just to notice what it feels like to feel supported. No effort on our parts at all. Notice the unconscious ways in which we rely on these things. We rely on this chair to hold us without anxiety or worry. We rely on the floor and the building to be steady so we can walk on it, we can function in it, we can live in it. We rely on this earth and its orbit and its rotation. We rely and depend on the sun and the solar system and the moon, all these systems, so dependable, so reliable. And you don't have to worry about theology here. It's really just noticing the experience that there are aspects of our lives which we may take for granted, but which are a constant source of support. You can bring awareness to the ways in which that's true of our body as well. Whatever the state of your body right now, whether it's you're very healthy or you're struggling with your health right now, just notice the systems that are working, sustaining life, the heart beating, the nervous system functioning, however it's functioning. Circulatory system, functioning however it's functioning. And whatever the state of your senses, just notice how they too provide support, things we depend on, things we use to navigate life without thinking. And finally, the breath. We wake up in the morning and we recite Modeh Ani or Moda Ani. Shehechazarta bi nishmati bechemla Rabba emunatecha, who restores my neshama to me moment by moment. Rabba emunatecha, great is your emunah, your faithfulness, your trustworthiness, your steadiness, your dependability. Just notice the dependability of the breath. So dependable we don't think about it at all most of the time. And so we're just going to sit now for the next 7 minutes or so and see if you can pay attention to bring awareness to that of which we're usually unaware. All the sources of support that are available to us right now, all the reminders of faithfulness, including the sun. And we'll sit in silence for a few minutes, and I'll bring us back with a poem to close us out. What is present right now that is helping to steady you, steady your nerves, steady your body, steady your spirit? and enabling you to take the next step forward in life. Might be a person, a friend, partner, colleague, someone you can count on. It might be nature, might be the rhythms of the year. It might be your faith. It's a spirit that guides you, that you can trust. It might be your gut. As we're sitting and as you consider the sources of support and steadying in your own life, I'll share this poem by Mary Oliver about love. It's called On Love. You can sit with this poem. I have been in love more times than one, thank the Lord. Sometimes it was lasting, whether active or not. Sometimes it was all but ephemeral, maybe only for an afternoon, but not less real for that. They stay in my mind, these beautiful people, or anyway, beautiful people to me, of which there are so many. You, and you, and you, whom I had the fortune to meet, or maybe missed. Love, 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 it was the core of my life, from which, of course, comes the word for the heart. And oh, have I mentioned that some of them were men and some were women, and some now carry my revelation with you. Some were trees, or places, or music flying above the names of their makers, or clouds, or the sun, which was the first and the best, the most loyal for certain. The sun who looked so faithfully into my eyes every morning. So I imagine such love of the world, its fervency, its shining, its innocence and hunger to give of itself. I imagine this is how it began. So if your eyes have been closed as we've been sitting, inviting you to let them flutter open, maybe wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, put a hand on your heart as a reminder that we can offer this emunah to ourselves, steady ourselves, offer that loving support, just as God offers Moshe in his time of need. And let's seal our practice today, as we do every time, by being faithful, being supportive for those who are in mourning or observing a yahrzeit today. I invite you to put the name or names of those you're holding in your hearts and remembering in the chat today. Today I'm remembering my father-in-law, Stephen P. Cohen. And if you're not reciting Kaddish, as always, inviting you to stay present and model emunah here for those who are, by offering your loving presence. And again, put the name or names of those you're remembering in the chat today. And thanks to Jet for sharing the words of the Kaddish on the screen. And please join me if you're reciting it by rising in body or in spirit, and you can unmute at this time. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Yishtabach, Vad Yivrach, Yirteh, V'Amichte, Yecham, V'Mecha,
V'Chayet Israel, Ba'Agala, Evisnan Karim,
Ila min kol birchata v'shalata, b'nechemata Shata,
Shalom,
Miranda
Rabba, Min
Allah,
Shemayim,
Baruch
Mayim,
Shem,
Aleinu,
Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, Lim Aleinu,
Say Shalom
Yisrael,
Dolamov,
Bru,
Say Shalom Aleinu,
Say Shalom
Kol
B'Rumav,
Yisrael, Kol
Shalom
Yeshvei
Bim
Tevel,
Israel,
Amen.
Kol Yoshvei Tevel, Bru, Amen.
Amen.
Thanks everyone for joining us today, and thanks Jet for holding our space again, as always, so beautifully. And thanks for catching me when I need it in terms of sharing today's sheet. Friends, if you're leaving us now, I want to let you know who's leading us the rest of the week. We have a wonderful lineup. We missed Rabbi Jenny Solomon today, but she'll be back soon, and wish Jenny a refuah shlema, complete and fast healing. Tomorrow will be led by Rabbi Margie Jacobs. Wednesday, Kimberly Duenas will be back to lead us, I believe, from El Salvador. On Thursday, I'm very happy that Sarah Waxman of At the Well will be back to lead us for Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Tu B'Shvat Chigia, the month of Shvat arrives. And Sarah, who's been out on maternity leave, is back and will be leading us going forward on Rosh Chodesh. And I'm very delighted that we are partnering with At the Well for a second sit each month on the full moon. And Jenna Sadaka, who led so beautifully while Sarah was out on her maternity leave, will be leading us when it's a full moon. So we're very delighted to partner with At the Well on Rosh Chodesh when there's a new moon, and on the full moon of the month as well, starting this month. And just a reminder, 2 weeks from today, that Rebecca Schisler will be leading us in that week-long practice. And that's the week of Tu B'Shvat, the New Year of the Trees. And no set next Monday, as Jet notes in the chat. So for those of you who would like to stay on, of course, as always, you're welcome just to use the container of this time and community to sit if you'd like. You could turn off the sound on your device, your computer, and just continue to sit. I'm happy to respond to questions or comments in the chat as well about the teaching today. And we'll keep an eye out for that. So if you have a question about the teaching, please put it in the chat, and I'll take a look. Yeah. Chanalea, so I made reference in the sit to the morning prayer, Modeh Ani or Moda Ani, which is traditionally said upon waking up, rising. And it has this phrase addressed to God, or however you want to understand God, Rabba Eminotecha. And Chanalea says that they understand that phrase to mean that God has God's faith in us is great, which I love. And it has it has certainly the possibility of that dual meaning. Rabba Munatecha, great is your faithfulness in me. And I really like that. I'm glad you brought that up, Hanalea, because in the Parsha, of course, Moses seems to have lost his trust in the process pretty quickly, which is not unexpected, probably. He's a newbie to this game. And it's God who says, basically, have faith. I'm gonna keep my promises. I am a promise keeper. But the name, that 4-letter name, Yod He Vav He, which is an untranslatable, unconjugated, strange form of the Hebrew root of the verb to be, of being, has this connotation that faithfulness is baked into being itself. It's not an external quality that's being introduced. And so, in a sense, God's faithfulness, God's emunah, is emunah that's built into all of a creation as it unfolds, including ourselves. It's a quality that we have in ourselves. So Moshe is also learning this quality, learning this midah, so that he can be faithful. And this becomes a term that is very much closely associated with Moses, who is described later in the Torah by God as an Eved Ne'eman, as a faithful servant. When Miriam and Aaron are gossiping about Moses in the book of Numbers and says, who appointed him and why is he so special? God's response to that is that one of the qualities that makes Moses distinctive is this quality of emunah. And so it's interesting that Moses kind of absorbs or wakes up to the presence of this quality within himself and serves to restore that emunah in others and to stand up for others and be an agent of emunah. So it works both ways. Okay, now I see a bunch of questions. Let's see. Could you say a little bit more about the distinction between emunah and bitachon? It's a little fuzzy to me. Thank you, Erica. Okay, so bitachon means trust. That means really our ability to be with, what we can't control, to be with our anxiety, to be able to persevere in that way. Emunah is faithfulness. Emunah is that inculcates or nurtures our ability to trust. So, for example, a parent who's a dependable, reliable parent, or a friend who is a dependable, reliable friend, or a partner who shows up and is present, and if people who model emunah, trustworthiness, faithfulness, steadiness, they can help us nurture in us bitachon. Our ability to trust is dependent upon, to some extent, it's innate, but it's also dependent on being nurtured by others or by aspects of life that we perceive as faithful, things that we can depend on. So I hope that's helpful. I like to see them as really two sides of the same coin. So one is that internal sense of feeling able to depend, able to rely, feeling able to trust. And the other is the factors that go into building up that capacity to trust. Thanks for that question. All right, Arlene, a meditation teaching is that you cannot depend on anyone or anything as people die, become unavailable. The ground is always shifting underneath us. How does your teaching about reliability sync with this? Well, yes, Arlene, you're right. The ground is always shifting, and we get thrown curveballs and all kinds of things that we don't expect, and terrible things happen along the way. People die, become unavailable, people don't show up. The question, I guess, for me is, and for many of us, is how do we meet that? How do we not fall prey to despair or to nihilism? And one of the ways I think we can do that is by, we can notice those things and notice those things are true, and notice how they undermine our sense of trust and our ability to be able to function and move forward in the world. And at the end, we also can catch ourselves and notice that there are things that are reliable, that do show up, that do restore that sense of trust, that enable us to take the next step. It doesn't mean that we do so with absolute trust, absolute faith, etc. But it can be just as simple as when we feel like we can't go forward, we're recognizing the dependability of the next breath, recognizing the dependability of the floor beneath us, etc. I'm not an expert in this by any means, but for those who've experienced trauma, which really undermines that ability to trust, because it's like the most horrific version of what you're describing. Often what is prescribed is orienting ourselves in the space in this moment to say, I am safe right now and right here in this moment. It can be as simple as naming 5 things in the room, or looking behind us at the corners, or just feel, or having some contact by holding our own hands, or giving ourselves a hug, or massaging the heart space, or feeling the support of the chair, or and so that's what I was encouraging us to try to do today, is in a time when the ground has shifted, when we are feeling, I'm with you. I feel deeply unsettled and unmoored and untrusting as a result of all these events. This is the time. This is the time to look for the things that can restore or instill a sense of trust, so that we can hopefully respond wisely. Let's see. And Noah, I'm reminded of Job's challenges, asking if God is here for us. If God is here for us and is dependable, then how do we understand what's happening now? How has God forsaken us? And so I am led to think it's really my faith that should be dependable, not from the external. I guess that's a variation on the same point or question. And Noah, thank you for that. I'm just reflecting on what you're saying about this, the external versus the internal. And I guess what I'm trying to say in terms of the Torah portion and this association of this particular name of God, the Yud He Vav He, being itself as being associated with the quality of faithfulness, of emunah, of being ne'eman, it kind of blurs that distinction between the external and the internal. Is really what I want to say. Is that faithfulness, emunah, is in us, around us, waiting to be accessed in some way. And what Rashi says about how our ancestors were not aware of this, but Moses is beginning to get an inkling of it, because the promise now is being fulfilled in his time, helps me, because I can think of, well, most of the time I am not aware of that. And most of the time I'm feeling unmoored, unsteady, not so trusting. It's not black and white, but maybe less so now than I was pre October 7th. And other challenges in life that come, whenever we're hit by a challenge, whether it's personal or collective, where our trust is undermined, but it's still there. And it's a question with our practice of growing an awareness of its presence. And I hope, for me, this is a helpful thing. I hope it's helpful for others as well. Michael's asking, well, we got 2 minutes, Michael. It's a big question. Could you comment on the contrast between the war-wrecking systems we're told will protect us, and the failures of would-be peace-preserving systems that accord with tzedakah and tikkun olam? Oh boy, that's a big question. I guess I'll just end with a quick comment. I think about Hanukkah, which I think addresses this question. The holiday of Hanukkah, which on the one hand originated as a military holiday about the victory of the Maccabees and human might, a guerrilla war to protect and establish political sovereignty. But with the demise of that commonwealth, the rabbis focused not on human might or strength as the ultimate source of faithfulness, but actually faith in God and God's power, spiritual power, the power you're talking about, the peace-preserving tzedek and tikkun olam power. And I think it's a good question. I think that we might say we need both. We need both. We need awareness of the values that we can depend on, that we've identified as life affirming and healing and loving, and also systems of protection. So, best I can do for right now. All right, friends, great to be with you. And I welcome any questions. Of course, always you can email me at Marc with a C at jewishspirituality.org. Glad to have the opportunity today to sit with you, and we hope to see you tomorrow to sit with Rabbi Margie Jacobs, and Rabbi Josh Fagelson will be here to host. So I'll see you soon. Thanks so much to Jet and to each of you for being here, and we'll see you soon. Many blessings. Everyone should be safe and well. Take care.